It was an ordinary Thursday evening in Cedar Grove, a small town where everyone knew their neighbor and strangers rarely went unnoticed. On the surface, it seemed like the perfect place to call home, safe, quiet, and predictable. But on October 16, 2015, that sense of safety was shattered with the discovery of a single, abandoned vehicle parked at the edge of Ravenwood Lake. The car belonged to 41-year-old Alan Reeves, a local contractor known for his impeccable work and his seemingly devoted family life. Inside the vehicle, officers found a wallet, a phone, and a pair of sunglasses neatly placed on the passenger seat. But Alan himself was nowhere to be found. Alan was a familiar face in Cedar Grove. With his charming smile and affable personality, he had built a reputation as a dedicated husband, a proud father of two, and a skilled contractor whose work graced many of the homes in the area. His wife, Emily, often described him as the cornerstone of their family, a man who always put his loved ones first. But when Emily reported him missing earlier that evening, she was certain something was wrong. Alan wasn't the type to disappear without explanation. That morning, Alan had left home just after 8 a.m., telling Emily he had a meeting with a new client across town. According to his wife, there was nothing unusual about his demeanor. He kissed her goodbye, grabbed his coffee, and promised to be back by dinner. But dinner came and went, and Alan's phone calls went unanswered. By 9 p.m., Emily's concern had turned into alarm. She contacted the Cedar Grove Police Department, pleading with them to find her husband. Within hours, officers found his car, but it raised more questions than it answered. The discovery of Alan's car sent shockwaves through Cedar Grove. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers rallied together, forming search parties that scoured the dense woods surrounding Ravenwood Lake. Flyers with Alan's face appeared on every lamppost, and local news stations began covering the story. Everyone wanted to believe he'd simply gotten lost or had some kind of accident, but as hours turned into days, hope began to wane. The unanswered question hung heavy in the air. Where was Alan Reeves? As the search continued, police began piecing together the events leading up to Alan's disappearance. They spoke to coworkers, neighbors, and even Alan's closest friends. What they discovered wasn't just puzzling, it was downright unsettling. Alan Reeves had left behind more than just his car. He'd left behind a trail, a series of clues that would lead investigators down a path no one in Cedar Grove could have imagined. Stay with us as we uncover the secrets of a man who seemed to have it all and the shocking truth that left even seasoned investigators questioning everything they thought they knew. If you're captivated by real-life mysteries like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter in this gripping story. As the hours stretched into days, Cedar Grove's police department intensified their efforts to uncover Alan Reeves' whereabouts. With no leads and no immediate evidence of foul play, the case teetered on the edge of becoming a cold file. But for investigators, something about the scene didn't sit right. Why would a man with no history of erratic behavior leave behind a wallet and phone, but no sign of where he'd gone? Detective Rachel Morgan, the lead investigator, began by examining the timeline of Alan's last known movements. Interviews with his family, co-workers, and clients painted a portrait of a man whose life appeared to be remarkably ordinary. But when they dug deeper into Alan's recent activities, inconsistencies began to emerge. Emily Reeves told police that her husband had mentioned meeting with a new client on the morning of his disappearance. Yet when investigators reached out to Alan's known clients and associates, no one could confirm such an appointment. In fact, several clients noted that Alan had recently seemed preoccupied and distracted, a stark contrast to his usual meticulous and personable demeanor. Further digging revealed a peculiar pattern. For weeks before his disappearance, Alan had been withdrawing unusually large amounts of cash from his bank account. In total, he had taken out nearly $25,000, always in increments too small to raise suspicion. When asked about the withdrawals, Emily claimed she had no idea where the money went or why her husband would need it. The discovery of these financial irregularities prompted detectives to take a closer look at Alan's bank records. What they found deepened the mystery. In addition to the cash withdrawals, there were charges for motel rooms in neighboring towns, none of which were familiar to Emily or anyone in Alan's circle. Surveillance footage from one motel captured a man resembling Alan checking in under an alias, but the grainy footage left room for doubt. Meanwhile, the car Alan had left behind became a focal point of the investigation. Forensic experts combed through the vehicle inch by inch, searching for anything that could explain his disappearance. The interior was pristine, too pristine. There were no fingerprints on the steering wheel or door handles, not even Alan's. It was as if the car had been wiped clean before being abandoned. As police began to piece together these fragments, a troubling question arose. Was Alan a victim, or was he hiding something? Detective Morgan decided to focus on Alan's digital footprint. His phone, though left in the car, contained fragments of text messages and emails that offered tantalizing glimpses into his state of mind in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. One text exchange stood out, a series of messages between Alan and an unknown contact listed only as D. The messages were brief and cryptic, but they hinted at some kind of arrangement. Alan, it's all set. Just need a little more time. D, time is running out. Don't forget what's at stake. The phone number tied to D was a burner, untraceable to any known individual. But it was enough to convince investigators that Alan Reeves was involved in something far more complicated than a missing persons case. As these revelations unfolded, Emily Reeves became an object of public sympathy and scrutiny. On one hand, she seemed devastated by her husband's disappearance, appearing on local news to plead for information. But in private interviews with detectives, her answers often wavered, and her recollections of Alan's recent behavior sometimes contradicted earlier statements. Neighbors began sharing their own observations. One described seeing Alan and Emily arguing loudly in their backyard just days before he vanished. Another mentioned a string of late-night visitors to the Reeves home, though none could identify who they were or why they were there. As more pieces of Alan's life came into focus, a troubling pattern of secrecy and deception began to emerge. Was Alan leading a double life? And if so, who or what was he running from? For Detective Morgan, the next steps were clear. Unravel Alan's secrets, uncover the identity of D, and determine whether Alan Reeves was still alive, or if someone had gone to great lengths to make him disappear forever. But the more they uncovered, the harder it became to separate fact from fiction, and the closer they came to a truth that would shock even the most seasoned investigators. The breakthrough came late one evening, almost by accident. While combing through Alan's digital records, a junior officer stumbled upon a peculiar detail, a purchase Alan had made just 2 weeks before his disappearance. It wasn't a hotel room or a suspicious cash withdrawal. It was a prepaid international phone card, the kind often used to make untraceable calls overseas. Detective Rachel Morgan wasted no time. She instructed her team to subpoena Alan's phone company for any records tied to the prepaid card. What they found revealed a string of calls placed to a number registered in Belize, a location that, until this point, had no apparent connection to Alan Reeves. While the discovery added to the growing mystery, it also presented a new challenge. Belize wasn't just far away. It was a place notoriously difficult to investigate from afar. And with no evidence to justify international cooperation, the police were forced to look closer to home for answers. Meanwhile, Emily Reeves' behavior began to raise eyebrows. In the days following the discovery of Alan's car, she'd withdrawn nearly $15,000 from their joint bank account, money she claimed was for legal fees and private investigators. Yet, when asked for receipts or details about these efforts, she provided none. Detective Morgan, wary of alienating Emily but unable to ignore the inconsistencies, decided to bring her in for a formal interview. For over 3 hours, Emily answered questions about her husband's habits, their financial situation, and his mysterious disappearance. At first, her responses were calm and measured, but as the interview progressed, cracks began to show. When pressed about Alan's relationship with Dee, Emily hesitated, her composure faltering for the first time. She denied knowing anyone by that name, but grew visibly uncomfortable when detectives presented the cryptic text messages. Her voice wavered as she insisted Alan must have been hiding something from her, claiming she was as much a victim as anyone else. But it wasn't just her words that raised suspicion, it was her timing. Just days after Alan disappeared, Emily had quietly filed a life insurance claim worth $500,000. While it wasn't unusual for a spouse to seek financial stability in the wake of uncertainty, the speed of her actions set off alarm bells for investigators. It was around this time that the FBI entered the case. With the evidence of possible interstate fraud and the international calls to Belize, the Bureau had the jurisdiction and the resources to dig deeper. Agents conducted their own interviews with Emily, neighbors, and anyone remotely connected to Alan's life. The most significant revelation, however, came from an unexpected source. A former employee of Alan's, a man named David Harper, approached authorities with information he claimed would blow the case wide open. David described Alan as a man who lived a dual existence. While the community saw him as a model citizen, those who worked closely with him knew of his shadowy dealings, unreported cash jobs, offshore bank accounts, and rumors of investments tied to individuals with questionable backgrounds. David also revealed one chilling detail. In the months before his disappearance, Alan had confided in him about feeling trapped and watched. When pressed for more, David claimed Alan had mentioned someone named D, a person he described as a silent partner who was growing impatient with Alan's failure to deliver on an unspecified deal. This testimony, combined with the phone records, financial anomalies, and Emily's questionable actions, shifted the focus of the investigation entirely. Alan wasn't just missing. He was at the center of a complex web of deceit, one that stretched far beyond the borders of Cedar Grove. The FBI's forensic accountants began tracing the $25,000 Alan had withdrawn in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. The trail led them to a series of obscure money transfers, all routed through shell companies with ties to Belize. It appeared Alan had been funneling money into an offshore account, a move that suggested he was planning for something drastic. And then came the moment that changed everything. A retired detective who had been following the case reached out to offer a startling piece of information. Years earlier, he had worked on a fraud investigation involving a man named Daniel Cross, a man whose modus operandi bore striking similarities to the mysterious D. Cross had disappeared after defrauding investors of millions, leaving behind nothing but a string of aliases and an arrest warrant. Could it be possible that D and Daniel Cross were the same person? And if so, had Alan Reeves become his latest pawn, or his latest victim? The questions multiplied, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Alan's disappearance was no random event. It was the result of a carefully orchestrated scheme, one that involved not just Alan, but a network of individuals operating in the shadows. As the clock ticked and the pressure mounted, investigators faced a critical decision. Should they focus their efforts on tracking down D, or should they double down on the possibility that Alan himself had staged his own vanishing act? What came next would provide the answer, and leave even the most hardened agents questioning everything they thought they knew about the case. The FBI's breakthrough came from an unexpected corner. A routine customs report flagged a suspicious shipment tied to an offshore entity. The shipment, consisting of nondescript electronic parts, had originated in Belize and was traced to a warehouse just 2 hours outside of Cedar Grove. Agents conducted a raid on the warehouse, expecting to find evidence of financial fraud. Instead, they stumbled upon something far more alarming. A cache of counterfeit passports, bundles of cash in various currencies, and a meticulously maintained ledger. Among the entries in that ledger were multiple references to AR, the initials matching Alan Reeves. The discovery marked a turning point. For the first time, investigators had tangible evidence tying Alan to an international criminal operation. But as they sifted through the evidence, a troubling question loomed. Was Alan a victim of coercion, or had he been a willing participant in the scheme all along? The ledger also contained a series of cryptic entries with dates, locations, and amounts of money exchanged. One entry, dated October 15th, the day before Alan disappeared, stood out. It referenced a transfer of $50,000 alongside the initials DC. Investigators couldn't ignore the possibility that this was a direct link to Daniel Cross, the elusive figure believed to be behind the scheme. With this evidence in hand, authorities issued a formal warrant for Cross's arrest and ramped up their efforts to locate him. Meanwhile, back in Cedar Grove, Emily Reeves found herself at the center of a media firestorm. Public opinion began to turn against her as rumors swirled about her potential involvement in Alan's dealings. It wasn't long before Emily's actions drew the attention of the FBI. Bank records revealed that, Just days before Alan's disappearance, Emily had made a series of cash deposits into an account under her maiden name, an account she hadn't disclosed to investigators. When confronted, Emily insisted the money was part of an inheritance she'd recently received, but the timing and secrecy raised more questions than it answered. Under mounting pressure, Emily agreed to a second round of questioning. This time, her demeanor was noticeably different, more guarded, less cooperative. Detectives asked her point-blank if she knew about Alan's offshore activities or his connection to D. Emily denied any knowledge, but her hesitation and conflicting statements left investigators unconvinced. As the case against both Alan and Emily grew, the FBI's focus shifted to the legal implications of their findings. Prosecutors began preparing charges against Emily for potential financial fraud and obstruction of justice, while investigators debated whether to pursue Alan as a suspect or continue treating him as a missing person. The complexity of the case reached its peak when forensic analysts cracked the encryption on Alan's personal laptop, which had been recovered from the abandoned car. Buried deep within the hard drive were emails and documents detailing a plan that Alan had been working on for months. The documents outlined a scheme to siphon money from a series of real estate deals, funnel the funds into offshore accounts, and eventually vanish without a trace. Most shocking of all, the documents included a letter addressed to Emily. In it, Alan explained his intentions to fake his death, transfer the money to Belize, and start a new life under a false identity. He claimed he was doing it to protect his family from forces beyond their control, though he stopped short of naming those forces outright. The letter painted a picture of a man trapped between desperation and fear, but it also left room for doubt. Was Alan genuinely trying to shield his family, or was this an elaborate ruse to justify his actions? As the case moved toward the courtroom, prosecutors faced a daunting challenge: proving intent. While the evidence suggested Alan had orchestrated his disappearance, there was still no concrete proof that he was alive, or that he hadn't been coerced into his actions. Emily's defense team seized on this ambiguity, arguing that she had been manipulated by her husband and knew nothing of his plans. They portrayed her as a grieving wife, blindsided by betrayal and unfairly targeted by authorities. In a dramatic twist, the prosecution introduced a witness who claimed to have seen Alan alive in Belize just weeks earlier. The witness, a former associate of Daniel Cross, described a man matching Alan's description meeting with Cross in a remote cafe. The testimony, though unverified, added another layer of intrigue to an already convoluted case. But the most explosive moment came during closing arguments when the prosecution revealed a final piece of evidence: a recorded phone call between Alan and an unknown accomplice. In the call, Alan's voice could be heard discussing the final transfer and reassuring the accomplice that everything was under control. The recording, though incomplete, was enough to convince many that Alan had willingly vanished and that he was still alive. The trial concluded with Emily being acquitted of all major charges, though her reputation was irrevocably damaged. Alan, meanwhile, remained a fugitive, with authorities issuing an international warrant for his arrest. But for the people of Cedar Grove, and for those following the case around the world, one question lingered. Was Alan Reeves a mastermind, a victim, or something in between? And if he was still alive, where was he now? As investigators closed one chapter of the case, they prepared for the next, knowing that the answers might lie somewhere in the shadows of an international network still shrouded in mystery. The months following Emily Reeves' trial were marked by an uneasy quiet. While the legal proceedings had provided some clarity, they left behind more questions than answers. Cedar Grove, once a close-knit community, remained divided. Some believed Alan was a victim of circumstances beyond his control, while others were convinced he was a cunning manipulator who had deceived everyone around him. For the Reeves family, life became a fragile balancing act. Emily moved out of the home she had shared with Alan and their children, seeking a fresh start in a neighboring town. Public scrutiny followed her every move, and whispers of complicity lingered despite her acquittal. But the FBI wasn't finished. With an international warrant in place, agents intensified their search for Alan Reeves, determined to uncover the truth behind his disappearance. Leads trickled in from around the globe: a possible sighting at an airport in Costa Rica, a transaction linked to his offshore account in Switzerland, even a grainy photograph taken in a crowded street in Belize. Yet, each lead brought investigators closer to frustration rather than resolution. Meanwhile, new evidence began to surface from unexpected sources. A former employee of Daniel Cross, who had turned state witness, provided detailed accounts of Cross's operations. He claimed that Alan had been a willing participant in the scheme, lured by the promise of financial freedom and the opportunity to escape a life he described as constricting. The witness alleged that Alan had spent months planning his exit, using Cross's network to secure the resources and connections he needed to disappear. But even these revelations were met with skepticism. Why would a man like Alan Reeves, a respected contractor with a loving family and a stable life, throw it all away? The answer, investigators believed, might lie in the encrypted files recovered from his laptop. Despite months of efforts by the FBI's cyber team, several key files remained inaccessible, their contents locked behind layers of sophisticated encryption. Then, in a stunning development, an anonymous whistleblower came forward with a trove of documents linked to Cross's network. Among them were records of emails and financial transactions implicating Alan in multiple fraudulent deals. But the most shocking document was a memo from Cross himself, in which he described Alan as an expendable liability. This memo suggested that Alan's disappearance might not have been entirely voluntary. Investigators began to explore the possibility that Cross, fearing exposure, had orchestrated Alan's vanishing act as a way to protect himself. The theory gained traction when a body matching Alan's description was discovered near a remote river in southern Belize. But even this apparent resolution proved fleeting. DNA tests revealed that the remains did not belong to Alan Reeves. Once again, the case returned to square one, with no definitive answers about his fate. For the people of Cedar Grove, the story of Alan Reeves became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how little we sometimes know about the people closest to us. Alan's disappearance, and the web of lies surrounding it, fractured the community's trust and left a lasting mark on its collective memory. Yet, even in the face of uncertainty, some clung to hope. Emily Reeves, in a rare public statement, expressed her belief that Alan was still alive. "I don't know why he did what he did," she said, "but I know he wouldn't abandon his family forever." To this day, Alan Reeves remains a fugitive, his name on wanted lists across multiple countries. The case, once a local mystery, has grown into an international enigma, captivating audiences around the world and inspiring countless theories about his fate. Some believe he started a new life under a different identity, aided by the vast resources of Cross's network. Others speculate that he fell victim to the very forces he tried to escape. And then there are those who think the truth is even stranger than fiction, that Alan Reeves, the man who fooled everyone, even the FBI, is still out there, watching as the world tries to piece together his story. For law enforcement, the search for Alan Reeves is far from over. But for the people who knew him, the mystery is as much about who he was as it is about where he went. Was Alan Reeves a man driven to desperation by circumstances beyond his control, or a calculating architect of his own disappearance? The answer, it seems, lies somewhere in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The story of Alan Reeves is a testament to the complexity of human behavior and the secrets we carry, even from those we love the most. As investigators continue their search for the truth, one thing remains certain. This case, like Alan himself, is far from ordinary. If you want to stay updated on stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new mystery, and let us know in the comments what you think really happened to Alan Reeves. Until next time, thank you for watching.